Hello and welcome to Walker Tea Review. I'm Jason Walker. Have a tea that is a white tea today to try out, to experience as deeply as possible, going beyond just, oh, does this taste good or not? How does it affect you, your feel of your mouth? How does it? What is the impression it gives after you taste? There's so much depth beyond beyond just having a happy tongue there at the start. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to, because I've got a small package, my hands are clean, and I'm raking in enough of this tea, and it's a fairly bulky, loose type of tea, but I'm going to rake in enough that it's going to cover the bottom inch so that I cannot see the bottom of my gaiwan. And that looks good right there. Let me just let those return for a moment, and then I'm going to add my water here. It's been brought to a boil, but it's been allowed to cool for a little over a minute, so it's not too hot. It was brought to just a boil, so let me get that out of the way. Let me put a lid on this, a little bit of water rising up above that rim, which is good. And then I can talk a little bit about this tea and kind of introduce it. This tea is a white tea. It is a premium white peony from GrandTea. You can find 25 grams of it available. That's a sample size, about 0.88 ounces, I believe is the number there, conversion. It is from Fujian province in China, and the GrandTea website product page says that this is a 2009 harvest. If that's incorrect, there will have to be some adjustments on the website there, but that's the information that's provided about this tea right now. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about this tea. Look at, as I was saying, it's not just about the taste. There are aromas. There's the feel in the hand, feel in the mouth, and so we'll talk about several of those things. First off, talking about dry leaf here. One of the things that's first hitting me is a lot of white baimodans is the Chinese term for white peony. A lot of baimodans have a kind of sweet clover type, as maybe even a freshly cut cucumber type of sweet smell to them. This one goes a little bit beyond that. There's something kind of a light black pepper type of smell coming off of this. So it's a little bit richer in that sense. Let me go ahead and pull out, just kind of shake out a few leaves and look at this. I'm looking at leaves. What you often look for with a baimodan is you are looking for a number of tips, silvery tips, but on the other hand, you are looking for silvery tips that are connected to other leaves. What can happen is a grower can have a tea that is weaker in quality, which does not have as many tips, and so then they're able from another harvest or from other sources can supplement that weaker tea and throw in loose additional silver tips, silver needles. So what you really are looking for are silver needles connected to those other leaves. In this particular case, what I'm noticing in this sample handful, a lot of silver needles, a lot of these tips, fuzzy white tips, are disconnected from the other leaves. I do see variations in color. I see some darker brown type colors. I see some rich darker green color, kind of a Lincoln green, maybe British racing green type of color. You get those silvery tips there, and then you get more of a closer to a bister, maybe slightly auburn type, deeper brown type colors there. Leaf portions, they're not that large, so these are more compact, tighter pieces. And some of your even darker leaf portions still have some silvery fuzz on them, so that's a positive note. These are even though they've been oxidized, they are still fairly young looking leaves in that aspect, that they haven't lost that silvery fuzz there. So this is going to be a trick to try to get all these back in, but I'm going to delicately return, pinch by pinch, these leaves. I'm still seeing some olive green type of colors in leaves as well. Most of the leaf portions I'm seeing are not fully intact, so there are, like I said, disconnected separate leaf portions in there as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and get to the pouring aspect here, and then I'll be able to talk more about the wet leaf as I do. So I'm going to angle my lid over to the side, hold it thusly. How often do you get to say the word thusly and work that into a conversation? So right there's my pour. Talk about this wet leaf and talk a little bit about these aromas and characteristics here. Aromas now have moved over towards a more richer, deeper heat, roasted, fiery type element. I'm getting more of a closer to a puffed rice, a toasted rice type of smell. It's coming off of this now. As it cools, it moves a little bit towards a sweeter, but still a sweeter toasted rice would be the best way to explain that. Pulling out again some of these tips and needles, so I just found one here. I'm going to lay that one there. It's a smaller one. It's got more of a it's silvery. It's moved from a silvery white to a pale green, and that's what happens with a lot of these silver needles. As they get steeped, they move over towards a greener type, olive green type of color. With that, there was here and there, occasionally, some of these needles, there is some blotchy type of brown aspect, which at first indication, I'm not going to go comment to confirm either way, that is blotchy due to some oxidation that took place, as the leaf may have been broken, bent, bruised. Here's a set that I was talking about, a leaf and a tip or a bud and two leaves there, so that's worth looking at. And then you do have some occasional full-size leaves, a little bit ragged on the edge, slightly ragged on the edge where that has been damaged or crumbled after it dried and was in the package. Let's see what else. Here's a fairly large. Notice that I'm going to set this one on here as well, but you do want to notice the distance between the tip, the leaf, and that secondary leaf there. Lots of distance in between those. So let me kind of shuffle this stuff around, and then I'll be able to go and talk about this liquor. And I made the mistake of pouring directly into my cup instead of into my pitcher, which I should have done. But I'll remedy that in just a moment. So let me set that aside, set that on top, just to kind of get over an area so I don't spill too much. This will allow my tea to cool a little bit, which is often a positive aspect for a Bimodon. It tends to bring out just a little bit more stronger notes as it cools. So, looking at our color here, it's a deeper, closer to a honey, and it's in its golden yellow, easing towards a brown there. So that's deeper and richer than several other Bimodon or white peonies that I've come across in a while. I still see the filaments from the white, the silver needles, that fuzz there that turns into a filament that floats around in here. Aromas are starting to pick up, are moving back towards that kind of cucumber note that I mentioned before. A little bit of a sweet, wet hay type of note coming out as well. Now let's go ahead now and give it a pour back. Just a little bit. I'll keep some in here. Let's go ahead. Looking down into it again, even colors, nice, consistent clarity, I should say. Nothing offsetting there. Give it one more shot here. Smoother in that it doesn't have as much astringency as some white peonies can have. A little bit more fairly decently developed on the tongue as far as a coating or a feel on there. It doesn't become overly dry. It's not as if you have just sometimes you can get by a Mudon like this and it feels like you had just chewed on a sheet of paper, and it just kind of gets that drying kind of starchy type feel that builds up in your mouth. This one gives a more smoother, gentler aspect of that. On the other hand, aromas and tastes are not as fully developed as I have come across. They're much more subtle. Okay. And then as far as the aftertaste go, the texture is what really carries on in the aftertaste. So there's still a little bit of astringency there. It's a light, gentle astringency. It doesn't get too heavy. It stays in balance with the brothy aspect there as well. And then the aftertaste. Slightly watered down honey, a little bit of kind of building on a little bit of that honey aspect, a little bit of kind of a honey roasted peanut coming out. Again, ever so slightly watered down, lighter, more subtle, so that it does have a slight, nutty is not the right word, but it's that honey coating on the peanut that really comes out in this one. Looking at this tea, I would give this tea, I wanted to say it was a little too subtle, a little too gentle. This tea actually has been roasted or heated more than some other Baimudans that I've come across. I would give this tea an 86. I get the impression that the heat was used to build on nuances there that may not have been there if the tea had not been if heat had not as much heat had not been applied. I don't think it naturally had as much potential, and it had to be coaxed and transformed into a little bit something else. So come back to Walker Tea Review, where we look at teas beyond the taste and the aroma to really experience what is in our teas and in ourselves.